I am Dr. Kondelingaswamy, Assistant Professor, School of Social Work, Indira Gandhi National Open University, IGNOU, New Delhi. Our topic on role of heredity and environment in personality development. After this session, you should be able to understand about the determinant of personality, the role of heredity, learning, and environment in personality development, the relative importance of heredity and environment in personality development. The importance of personality increases as social life becomes more complex. A pleasant personality is considered a valuable asset in a complex society, making individuals highly desirable and sought after by others. The term personality is derived from the Latin word persona, which means mask. Among the Greeks, actors used masks to hide their identity on the stage. This dramatic technique was later adopted by the Romans, to whom persona denoted as one appears to others, not as one actually is. Various definitions of personality have been given by different psychologists. They define personality in such a way as to include motivational aspects as well as other outstanding characteristics. Of these, the most widely accepted is the short but all inclusive definition proposed by Gordon W. Allport. According to Gordon, to him, personality is the dynamic organization within the individual of those psychophysical systems that determine his unique adjustment to his environment. Role of heredity in personality development. The personality pattern is founded on the individual's hereditary endowment, but it is not inherited. It is the product of learning during the course of prolonged social relationships with people both within and outside the home. As Anderson has pointed out, personality is organized around nodal points or experiences which have received specific emphasis. At the moment of conception, each new human being receives a genetic inheritance which provides all the potentialities for his behavior and development throughout his lifetime. This endowment includes potentialities for an individual's bodily equipment, for the development of specific skills, abilities, and kinds of behavior, and for patterns of growth and change throughout predictable life cycle. The mechanics of heredity. Genes are the real carriers of person's heredity. Together, the chromosomes probably contain from thousands of genes, which are a complex molecule consisting of thousands of atoms in special arrangement. We know we generally called the genes. It carries the blueprint for individual's development and direct growth from one celled unit to an adult. Within this inherited structure lies the potentialities for behavior. Role of heredity, how it importance in personality development. The personality pattern is inwardly determined by and closely associated with the maturation of physical and mental characteristics which constitute the individual's hereditary endowment. Although social and other environmental factors affect the form of personality pattern takes, it is not instilled or controlled from without but evolves from the potentials with the individual. The principles, raw materials of personality, physique, intelligence, and temperament are the results of heredity. How a person will develop depends on the environment influences within which a person grows. The significance of hereditary endowment in determining the personality pattern has been stressed by many researchers. It is generally held that personality is formed from the interaction of significant figures in the family, first the mother, later the father and siblings, and subsequently the extra family figures with the child. The child brings to this interaction biological constitution, a set of needs and intellectual capacities which determine the way in which a person is acted upon by the significant figures in his environment. Within the family and outside the family, how the personality patterns has been tested by many researchers. In the course of interaction of hereditary and environmental factors, the individual selects from his environment what fits his needs and rejects what does not. Thus, personality pattern develops through interactions with the environment which an individual himself has initiated. One reason for stressing the role of heredity in the development of personality is to recognize the fact that personality pattern is subject to limitations. A person who inherits a low level of intelligence, for example, cannot even under the most favorable environmental conditions develop a personality pattern that will lead to adequate personal and social adjustment than a person with high level of intelligence. Thus, heredity sets limits to a person's development. Furthermore, recognition of the limitations imposed by heredity underlines the fact that people are not totally free to choose and develop kind of personality pattern they want. Using intelligence again as an illustration, it may be said that a person with a low grade intelligence cannot develop the personality pattern of a leader, even though he wants to do so, and even though he has a strong motivation to try to develop the personality traits essential for leadership. Role of environment in personality development. No characteristic is so dependent on heredity that it would not require certain minimal environmental conditions for its development. This is true even of physical traits and certainly much more so of intellectual, social, and emotional ones. At any given moment, an individual is the product of countless interactions between his genetic endowment and physical and socio-cultural environment. How the genetical, social, and physical environment influence the individual personality development. By physical environment, we refer to the natural world surrounding the individual. Here we can say climate, terrain, food supplies, disease, germs, and so on. By socio-cultural environment, we mean the world of people, customs, values, and man-made objects. Physical environment. People of the earth live under diverse conditions of climate, terrain, and natural resources. Some live in dense jungle and others on barren deserts. Some live on high mountains and others on flat prairie lands. Some live where it is extremely cold and others where it is oppressively hot. Some live where where it rains most of the time and others where there is chronic drought. In some places, food and other resources are plentiful. In others, they are so scarce that most of the individual's life must be spent in eking out a bare substances, a bare subsistence. Some areas are infested with disease and other hazards to physical safety. Others are relatively free of disease and danger. Climate and terrain. People inhabiting areas where condition of climate or terrain are unfavorable tends to undergo adaptive psychological changes. For example, the circulatory system of Eskimo tends to lie deep within protective fatty layer which conserves their body heat, scarcity, disease, and other unfavorable conditions. Even today, millions of people live in areas where disease is rife and food supplies are inadequate. Such conditions take a tremendous toll in terms of reduced physical vigor, bodily damage, and loss of life. Because adverse physical conditions influence the way a group lives, we may assume that they also exert some effect, at least indirectly, on the personality development of individual members. However, the precise effect is difficult to assess, for again, we typically find cultural factors complicating the total situation. It becomes very difficult to evaluate the effect of physical environment on individual and group differences in development, except in cases where unfavorable conditions lead to actual bodily damage, as in case of malnutrition and disease. The role of the physical environment seems less important as compared to that of socio-cultural environment. Here we can say physical socio-cultural environment is more important role in the personality development compared with the physical environment. Socio-cultural environment, in much the same sense that man receives a genetic heritage which is the end product of countless million years of evolutionary history. So, the individual receives a socio-cultural heritage which is the end product of many thousands of years of social evolution. This heritage varies dramatically from one social group to another, but the various cultures of the world have enough in common to enable us to speak meaningfully of human culture. Every group, for example, has its language, family, and social structure, customs, values, music, and art. These institutions are characteristically human and tend to be transmitted by similar means in every society. Sometimes the instruction is deliberate, but just as often it is not. Here, the chief means by which the socio-cultural environment exerts its influence on individual development. Group membership and instruction. Both deliberately and unconsciously, each society teaches its concepts, values, and accepted behaviors to its children. In Indian society, we teaches our values, concepts to next generation. This instruction is largely accomplished by the social institutions such as home, school, and temple are the equivalents. Thus, systemic instruction, together with the examples set by adults or other models, tend to make for some degree of uniformity, and to establish what may be called the basic personality type of the particular society. The individual's basic personality structure is affected not only by the larger social group but also by the various subgroups to which one belongs to, groups based upon his family membership, religion, occupation, social class, age, and sex. In our society, we can recognize the children based on their occupation, social class, and age and sex. Each subgroup tends to foster certain values, beliefs, and approved behavior patterns, which may in turn be subject to the restrictions imposed by society as a whole. The fact that each individual belongs to somewhat different types of subgroup tends to produce individual differences. Just as common membership in the larger cultural group makes everyone somewhat alike, groups that an individual identifies with or wishes to be associated with are known as reference groups. A person sets a goals, shapes behavior, and judges self worth based on the norms and values of these groups. At times, even groups from which the individual is excluded can have a stronger influence on them. Status and role. In every social structure, there are a variety of distinguishable positions: doctor, teacher, lawyer, carpenter, parent, student, child, and so forth, each of which contributes in some way to the total group functioning and is accorded a certain social status. Status brings with it both privileges and responsibilities. For example, the medical doctor has the privilege of practicing medicine and is held in high regard by other members of society. In return, he is expected to follow the ethical code of the profession. If the doctor fails to do so, he may have his medical license revoked and be, be relegated to an inferior social standing. To clarify what is expected of a person with a given position and status, society establishes various roles for its members to play, each associated with certain pattern of expected behavior. Thus, the role of an army officer calls for loyalty, decisiveness, courage, and resourcefulness. Here we can say more examples: as a parent, as a teacher, as a student, as a child. There, uh, there is a framed values and rules, roles and status in the society. So every individual plays their role and status in the society. Each person of the society, young or old, tends to develop the skills, behavior, and values that his role seems to demand. If individual deviates too, if individuals deviates too far from what is expected of him, he is likely to run into difficulties in his social relationships. If the individual deviates from his roles, then he can uh, he can face difficulties in his social relationships. The extent to which role expectations can influence personality development is well illustrated by Margaret Mead's study in 1949 of the Chambuli, a New Guinea tribe, in which the sex roles are practically the reverse of our Indian nation. Women are supposed to earn the living, handle business transactions, handle business transactions, take the initiative in courtship, and in general act as head of the family. Men, on the other hand, are expected to be coquettish, graceful, prone to gossip, good homemakers, and interested in dancing and theatricals. The established roles for men and women among the Chambuli obviously tend to channel personality development along lines very different from those in our culture. In our in our country, few tribal groups follows the same type of roles men and women. Interpersonal relationships. Man is a social animal. Much of his personality development reflects his experiences with the other people. In many societies, a certain pattern of interpersonal relationships may predominate over others. For example, the norm may be for competition or cooperation, hostility or friendliness. In general, however, interpersonal relationships contribute to individuality rather than similarity of development. For no two of us have exactly the same acquaintances, the same acquaintances, nor do we have an identical relationship with the people we do know in common. Even parents relate to each of their children in somewhat different ways. The experience of love and hate, of friendship and distrust, of shared experience and misunderstanding that characterize our associations with other people are in each case unique. Although we have many kinds of interpersonal relationships in the course of our lives, those that have the greatest influence in shaping our development are those with our parents and with members of our peer groups. We can say here few examples of individuals' personality development may be parents or teachers or their role models who are influence the individual personality in their lifetime. Apart from these, many other types of interpersonal relationships with brothers and sisters, grandparents, teachers, neighbors may play a significant part in shaping personality. Here, uh, we can say in the Indian family system, our grandparents are played very crucial role molding the personality of individuals. Not only the grandparents, parents also played very crucial role, crucial and important role in personality development. Even a chance meeting with someone may chance the direction of our lives. Here we can say in between our education, in our adulthood, we can meet the people. They can also change our directions, change our goals, change our characteristic, change our values in our personality development. So here we can say grandparents, parents, and siblings and persons who are met in our lifetime, they are also played very prominent role in personality development. Role of learning in personality development. Learning, particularly through conditioning, training, and guided instruction, plays a crucial role in shaping and developing an individual personality pattern. Attitude towards self, characteristic modes of responding to people and situations. Attitude towards the assumption of socially approved roles and methods of personal and social adjustment, including the use of defense mechanism, are learned through repetition and are reinforced by the satisfaction they bring. Gradually, the self concept develops, the learned responses become habitual, constituting the traits in the individuals. Social pressures within and outside the home determine what the traits will be incorporated into the pattern. If a boy is encouraged to aggressive, for example, because aggressiveness is considered as a sex appropriate trait for males, he will learn to react to people and situations in an aggressive way. If, on the other hand, aggressiveness wins social disapproval or does not bring satisfaction, the person will try out other methods of adjustment. until he finds one that meets his needs. He will then repeat it until it becomes habitual form of behavior. There are two important reasons for which it is significant to know that learning plays a role in the development personality pattern. First, it tells us that First, it tells us that control can be exercised to ensure. First, it tells us that control can be exercised to ensure that the individual will develop the kind of personality pattern that will lead to good personal and social adjustment. Second, it tells us that unhealthy self concepts and socially unacceptable patterns of adjustment can be changed and modified. As in all learning, the sooner a changer or modification is attempted, the easier it will be. Relative importance of heredity and environment. Today, there is ample evidence that the form a child's personality pattern will take depends not solely on the training methods used or the kind of environment in which the person grows, but also on the hereditary potentials a person brings into the world with him. Conditions affecting interaction of heredity and environment. An individual's potential at the time of birth affects other people, and the potentials themselves are affected by the relationship the individuals has with significant people during early years of his life. The molding of personality pattern is thus a far more complex process than was previously believed, and many more elements are involved. The development is a function of interaction of the significant others with the biological constitution and others potentialities, biological constitution and other potentials. In this interaction, significant people try to mold the child's personality into a culturally approved pattern. How they handle the child's basic drives determine what sort of a person the child will be. The attitudes and behaviors of parents, the attitudes and behaviors of parents, siblings, peers, relatives, and other peoples towards the child will also affect the interaction pattern and thus influence the molding of personality. A child who has learned to be aggressive at home will instigate instigate relationships with people outside the home which are characterized by aggressive behavior. By contrast, the child who comes from a home where aggression is kept to a minimum will have friendly, cooperative interactions with outsiders. Value of knowing relative importance of heredity and environment, which plays a more important role in personality development, heredity or environment. The question cannot be answered in one word. For certain aspects of personality pattern, heredity is more important and for others environment. Also, it is the point influence of the two that is crucial rather than their separate effects. So here we can say heredity and environment both influence the personality development. For practical as well as theoretical reasons, it would be extremely useful to be able to determine which influence is more powerful. One practical application of such knowledge, which has been suggested by Gerslid, is if children differ by reason of their innate characteristics in their tendency to be sensitive, to become hurt, to be ailing, or to be defiant, to acquire attitudes of shame, to tolerate much or little pain and frustration. Then we might assume that they differ in their innate tendencies to grow up as neurotic or healthy minded individuals. The relative importance of the two influences on personality cannot be determined once and for all because they may reinforce one another in their effect or they may conflict. The influence of the environment depends not on the environmental one but also on the person's heredity. The role of socialization in the development of human personality. The role of socialization in the development of human personality is fundamental and multifaceted. Socialization is the lifelong process through which individuals learn and internalize the values, beliefs, norms, and social skills necessary to function as members of society. Examples with two cases of Anna and Isabella. How the socialization impacts the individual's personality. Here we can say Anna's example and Isabella also. Anna, an illegitimate child, was caused to be kept all alone in an upstairs room. When removed from the room at the age of nearly 6.5 years, Anna could not talk, walk, or do anything that showed intelligence. She was expressionless. She was express, expressionless and indifferent to everything. She could not make any move on her own behalf. This shows that in the absence of socialization, the purely biological resources are too poor to contribute to the development of complete personality. Communicative contacts is the core of socialization. Isabella was found at the age of 6.5 years. Like Anna, she was an illegitimate child and had been kept in isolation for that reason. When found, she was apparently utterly unaware of relationship of any kind. Isabella's behavior was comparable to that of a child of 6 months. Later attempts were made to teach her to speak. At first, she seemed hopeless, but later she responded and ultimately reached the normal level of development by the time she was 8.5 years old. Hezbollah's case shows that isolation up to the age of 6 with failure to acquire any form of speech does not preclude the subsequent acquisition of it. But what would be the maximum age up to which a person could remain isolated and still retain the capacity for full cultural acquisition is hard to say. Both these cases, however, show the role of socialization in personality development. The both examples above play the important role in socialization in personality development. Meaning of socialization. Human society is not an external phenomena but exists solely in the minds of its members. The human infant comes into the world as a biological organism with needs. Individual gradually molded into a social being and learn social ways of acting and feeling. Without this process of molding, the society cannot continue itself, nor can cultural exist, nor can individual become a person. The process of molding a person is called socialization. It is through the process of socialization that an individual becomes a social person and attains personality. Socialization involves inducting the individual into the social and cultural world, making him a particular member in society and its various groups, and initiating him to accept the norms and values of the society. Socialization is a matter of learning that enables the learner to perform social roles. Agencies of socialization. Socialization turns a child into a useful member of society and gives him social maturity. In this process, few agencies play vital role in the socialization. Therefore, it is a paramount importance to know as to who socializes the child. There are two sources of child socialization. The first includes those who have authority over the child. The second are those who are similar to the child. Here, who those are authoritative to child, we can say the first category may include parents, teachers, elderly persons, and the state. The second one includes peer groups. The second one are those who are similar to the child. We can say here peer groups, friends, and fellows in the club. Briefly, the main agencies of socialization are, we can categorize it into two: primary agencies of socialization and secondary agencies of socialization. In primary agencies of socialization, the family, the parents of or family constitute the first agency for the socialization of the child. They are not only closely related to the child, but also they are physically nearer to the children than others. From the parents, children learn language, they are taught societal morality, they start respecting persons in the authority. In the family, a child learns a number of civic virtues. The family, therefore, is rightly called the cradle of social virtues. A child gets their first lesson in cooperation, tolerance, self sacrifice, love, and affection in the family. In the family, not only parents and grandparents and siblings also influence, uh, impact the personality development through the socialization process. The environment of family influences almost all aspects of growth of a child. Neighborhood. The neighborhood is the second important agency of socialization. Good neighborhood can make a child to grow as a positive person and responsible citizen. In general, we usually we use the example where you are from. If you are from good neighborhood, we can say is a good citizen, good person. Peer groups are the playmates. The peer group and friends also constitute an important agency of socialization. The relationship between the child and their playmates is one of equality. As stated above, the child acquires cooperative morality and some of informal aspects of culture like fashion, fads, craze, modes of gratification, and forbidden knowledge from the peers. The school. The school is also a very important agency of socialization. In the school, the child gets education which molds the ideas and attitudes. Proper or adequate education can make the child a good citizen, while a bad education can turn him into a criminal. So, your education is of great importance for the process of socialization. A well planned system of education can produce competent people. If children from different secondary agencies of socialization, there are few other agencies of socialization which are known as secondary agencies of socialization. They include religion. Religion has been an important factor in society, especially in Indian society. We can say religion plays very important role. It is the matter how the person socializes. In the early history of societies, religion provided a bond of unity, though in modern society, the importance of religion has diminished and it constitutes to mold our beliefs and ways of life. The child sees their parents going to the temple or mosque or church, performing religious ceremonies and listening to religious sermons, which may determine the course of life and shape how their parents practice their religion in really their children practice their footpaths follow the footpaths of their children parents children follow the footpaths of their parents. The state is an authoritarian agency of socialization. It makes a law for the people and lays down the modes of conduct expected of them. The people are bound to obey these laws. If they fail to adjust their behavior in accordance with the law of the state, they may be punished for such failures. Thus, the state is also molds a person's behavior and personality. Where children practice the rules and regulations framed by the state, as the parents also play the important role how the follow the rules and regulations of the state. If the follow the rules and regulations of the state, we respect the state. If violate the rules, then the individual children the they they punished by the state. So here state also play pivotal role in the socialization of the child. After all this uh, important discussion, how the personality, how the heredity, and how the environment play important role in the personality development. The development of personality depends upon a lot of factors, not only uh, heredity and environment. The factors of heredity, environment, learning, and process of socialization are the important determinants of personality. Heredity of the genetics basis Heredity of the genetic basis is a very important determinant of personality because the principal raw material of personality such as physique, intelligence, and temperament are to a large extent dependent on the genetic endowment of a person. Environment is also a very important determinant of personality development. Physical environment, climate, and terrain are important among the factors which affected one's personality development. Thank you.